Brian, we're doing a dynasty price check on Derrick Henry. So I have a trade here to start us off for you. A 12-team Superflex half PPR start 13. So extremely deep starting rosters. Derrick Henry or the 201 and the 301 of this year's draft?
Yeah, I think I'm taking the picks just because kind of some of the stuff that you talked about in the last video about Saquon, basically, knowing when to sell guys. Obviously, Derrick Henry is like a super freak, like in terms of like what he's been able to do. But I don't know. Pick 13 and pick 25 in such a deep league, which is also something you talked about, which definitely made me stop and think about it for a little bit because we were talking about a very shallow league in the last video with Saquon. It's kind of like, yeah, I think the picks are kind of the easy choice here.
Yeah, it's interesting. We're kind of approaching this from a vacuum point of view. Obviously, I think if you're a complete rebuild, you want to move off of Henry when you can. But yeah, start 13 is super deep. The 201 is probably in next year's draft. It could be as valuable as like the 110 in terms of like what receiver you're getting and where they were. Like it still could be a first round receiver that you're getting at that point, or a quarterback drafted in the first round, and like a Bo Nix or Penix. The RB1 that we've talked about a lot. We don't know who that's going to be, but it could be the RB1 in this draft. So that 201 is pretty valuable. Yeah, the start 13, you just need players like, we talked to, like you said, you talked about in last, like Treylon Burks becomes a useful asset in a start 13, not a start
and
8. Dotson. Yeah. Like these guys are valuable. Yeah. So now if this is dropped to like a standard start 10 or anything lower, I'd think twice. We are doing this on March 10th, the day before free agency, so we don't know where Henry's going to be at. Always, if he's on Baltimore, does that change your point of view? Or goes to the Eagles, does that change for you a little bit? Do you want to kind of keep Henry for now, or are you still making that move?
Yeah, I think I'm still making the move, honestly, because I don't think you're ever going to get more for him, but you have to be a serious competitor to have. Like I know we're kind of saying in a vacuum, but when I see the 201 and the 301, that just makes me think you're like the worst team because you have first round pick or the first pick in 2 rounds. So I need to kind of like clear that out of my head a little bit. But I just think that you're never going to get any more for Henry, and so I think it's just time to cut bait and take a couple of shots on some young running backs. With both of those picks potentially, that could be, running, even if it's running back like 3 and 6 or 3 and 8 or 3 and 10 in this class. It's like, I know it's not like a good running back class, but it's like I think I'd rather have those 2 guys to just try and push reset on the position and hope one of them hits.
Yep, no, that's fair. Again, especially in the start 13. So what about this other one here? It's a 12-team Superflex full PPR, 0.1 per carry. So every 10 carries, you're getting a point. Start 9, a little bit shallower. Derrick Henry or a 2026 first? I think this is an interesting one too, especially with the point per carry or 0.1 per carry.
Yeah, it is. It is very interesting because it's 2 years out draft-wise. Well, really 3 because you're talking about, we still haven't done this year's draft and then next year. So it's a lot harder to value that first kind of thing because it's so far out. Like it's really hard to figure out, like, is that going to be an early, late, middle, first, that kind of thing. But I think you've kind of talked about it before where it's like, yeah, I'm just taking any first for X player kind of a thing. Like I don't care how far out it is because that first will only get more valuable, and Henry only gets less valuable, So, yeah, I think I'm taking the first and just pretty happy with that because even if it's the 112 2 years from now, it's like I bet you it's still pretty good.
Yeah, I think knowing your league format is good too. Like, how does your league not format, but like your league members? How do they value picks? Do they really value picks? And they're, you see picks from multiple years out being traded and stuff like that, then like that helps you go towards the pick as well, because you can use it in the middle of the season or something like that, right? Like you said, it's only going to get more valuable, right? It's March 10th. In October of this year, that 2026 pick is going to slightly go up in value, right? The end of the season next year, it's going to go up even more in value. So, yeah, I kind of agree. He's kind of one of those, whether I'm competing or not. And I think an aspect we talked about in the last video, like an aspect to consistently staying competitive is knowing when to trade guys away so you're not holding the bag. And, you know, Henry's literally, you could be caught holding the bag this year. Like, we don't know. He's just a complete question. But there's a lot of running backs like that they're at that age of like, they could be top 5 and I wouldn't be surprised, or they could be RB40 and suck because they get hurt or they just aren't good anymore. So, yeah, he's a really, really interesting one for sure. And then, but the point per one carry, I think, comes into play too, because that makes Henry even more valuable, right? Especially if he goes to a run-heavy team. So, yeah. Well, any predictions on where he goes in free agency? You think he's going to the Ravens? You think he's going to the Eagles? Or do you think he's just like taking the most money and going to whatever team?
Yeah, I think he will go to a team that's competitive for sure. I mean, he should, you know, like for his career's sake, but also those two teams you just mentioned, it's like, man, he would be such a monster on either one of those teams, you know, as long as he stays healthy, you know. I mean, the dude's I was just looking this up because I know it's a lot. He's had 2,000 rush attempts now in the NFL. So, yeah, he's a prime candidate for slowing down, which he kind of did last year, but kind of not, you know, like he didn't have like the monster season we're used to him having, but man, he was still so good.
I mean, it was basically, he just didn't get as many carries because he had almost the same yards per attempt, but he had 70 less carries essentially. So, but still led the league. I think that's funny at 280. Yeah. And I think it was second in the league in rushing. So I like the Eagles and Ravens because those are historically, with the quarterbacks and offensive systems, they don't throw their running backs a lot, but also Henry has proven he doesn't really need that. Like, he's had RB1 overall seasons and he's caught less than 20 passes, which is usually pretty rare. So, like, I'm not worried about he needs to catch 40 passes to be good. It helps, but he can do it just on the ground.
You know what's funny is, like, I thought the same thing yesterday about Henry being like extremely high, and I couldn't remember what category it was for this past year, but you just said second in the league in rushing, and it's like, is that actually true? I don't know. We don't have to look this up right now, but he only had 1,167 yards last year, so it's that can't be second. Like, but what's that?
Yeah, McCaffrey was one at 1,450. Henry, and then Kyron was like 20 yards behind. Obviously, Kyron missed his time, but
it just seems really low to be second. I don't know. I mean, it's a lot of yards, obviously, but it's like, really, no one had 1,200 or more yards besides McCaffrey. I'm just kind of surprised.
That, just for reference, that would have been 7th most in 2022. It is a pretty low. I think that would have been
to be second.
Sixth most, and so it should be more like top 7, not second, but
right.
Yeah, it was pretty low for sure.
Okay, yeah, just kind of curious because I was talking to Dad yesterday about this stuff, and I was like, I thought he finished higher because he was like running back 7 or something last year, and I thought for some reason he was like top 4 kind of a thing, but I don't know, just getting stats mixed up.
But yeah, Derrick Henry, we'll see where he goes. That could slightly uptick his value as soon as tomorrow. We will see. But we'll be back with more of these, some Dynasty price checks. Next up, we have Nico Collins, another interesting guy. So we will catch you guys all in that video.